Welcome everybody to the Serpent Tarot for another pick a card reading. So today's reading is hopefully going to be a bit of fun. Quite often when I say that, Spirit has a bit of a different agenda in mind and brings up some fairly significant things. But this is meant to be sort of a bit of fun and interesting exploration. It's asking, what would you think of you in a way, or how would you view you if you met you? So what this is looking at is that we all know ourselves probably better than any other person is going to know us. We have access to our inner motivations, our intent, our psychology, our history. Maybe the people that are closest to us might know us as well, if not more, than we do in certain aspects. But there is no getting past the fact that all of us have a space within ourselves that is only ours, and where we understand and calibrate all the various aspects of our personality. Having said that, there can be a disconnect between how we view ourselves, our intent, our motivations, and how we want to come across, and how we come across to others. And so it would be a very interesting exercise if we could go into another dimension and find ourselves and meet ourselves. So I guess that's the invitation of this reading. It is trying to look at our sense of ourselves. We're going to start with looking at our sense of ourselves compared to how we would view ourselves if we met ourselves, and at that first sort of like level, and where the differences might be and where there might be synergies, or where the difference works in your favour and helps you, where it might also be a challenge. And then we'll be using tarot to have a look at a bit more information about that first impression, and then how it would develop over time if we got to know ourselves as a separate entity. Then, having said that, we'll look at some of the different personality aspects that would inform that getting to know ourselves better, that may or may not be a surprise to you. And then we'll finish off with some advice from Spirit about how to really use this new information. So to help picking the right reading, and as always I'll put down the numbers now for those who like to choose by numbers, I decided to use again different tarot packs for the main part of the tarot reading, because I think that does give a different energy that helps people decide, and to give an example of each of the decks so that can help you decide which pile to go to. I've used the Fool card, and this is not to say that we are all fools about ourselves. What I'm trying to evoke here is that innocence of the Fool and the adventure of the Fool, and therefore evoke the attitude that I hope that we can bring to this reading. This is just a bit of fun, as I say. It's not meant to be disturbing, and take what resonates for you. If there's something in how this is saying you would come across to you that you really just don't think is right, this is a collective reading, remember, so don't just let that pass. But anything that you think could be right, then that is really useful information, and it's a different perspective and hopefully an enjoyable one. So for pile 1, I'm using the Crystal Unity Tarot, so that's the Fool card from there. For pile 2, I'm using the Movie Tarot, so that's the Fool card from there. For pile 3, I'm using the Venetian Carnival Tarot, and that's the Fool card from that tarot. And then last but not least, I'm using the Cute and Creepy Tarot, and that's the Fool card from there. I'm just using these decks because I feel they're quite vibrant and interesting, and they're all quite different. So they bring different energies to this sort of a reading. The Crystal Unity, to me, because it's all in silhouettes, gives that sense of illuminating the shadow and finding out, and not the bad as in the shadow part of us in that sense, but what we don't see as easily about ourselves. With the Movie Tarot with Forrest Gump and so forth here, this is really to sort of pick up the narrative that we have, how our understanding of ourselves is part of our own, being the main character in a movie or a story or something like that. With the Venetian Carnival Tarot, I like the idea of all the carnival masks, and how much do we wear masks, how much do we understand what is true and what isn't true of ourselves there. And for the Cute and Creepy Tarot, it's a tarot which the designer wanted people to reacquaint themselves with, mythological and fantastical creatures, and what is wonderful and unique and can be reclaimed and restored out of those sorts of characters and so forth. So I just felt they were all decks that really call to the spirit of this reading. And so hopefully one of them calls to you, or the number does, or there's some other way that you will tune in to find the reading or readings that you want to go to. By all means, go to more than one if you want, particularly if you are finding early in the piece it just doesn't gel. Might suggest you're in the wrong reading and to check out another one. So, and the beauty about this one is you should be able to maybe feel that, because if how I'm describing how you understand yourself doesn't seem to be right, then that probably is an indication to choose another one. So, but I leave that all up to you. That's always down to your discernment. When you do know what reading or readings you want to go to, the timestamps, as always, will be in the description box below, and I'll see you in your reading. Welcome, pile one, to your reading. So these cards here are meant to represent sort of your internal view of yourself at the moment, and this represents what you would think of you if you met you. And this is really interesting. I laid them out and I had a look at them, I contemplated them a bit before pressing record, because I think what's happening here, I thought one of three things is going to happen in these readings. Either there's going to be a very strong synergy between the two, which would mean whatever your self-image is very much how you come across to others. The second thing would be if there's a real dissonance between the two. And the third would be if the you met was actually a catalyst for some sort of change in you. And I suspect that that's what we're looking at here. So let me talk this through. The you that you see at the moment, you are a white knight to people. You are someone who will fight the good fight. You have a real sense of sort of life's debts, karma, justice, and so forth, and a preparedness with Ganesha to go through obstacles and with Bodhisattva, to unite people, but unite them through the fight and to actually bring about a better outcome. And this is because there is the side of you that is a great warrior and the side of you that is a great empath. So one side of you is about love and unity through empathy, through understanding the plight of others. And I think through understanding the consequences of things with the South Node there. The other side of you is, when necessary, you will go into a battle. So I think your self-image, and I don't think it's actually wrong, I think this is just an interesting extrapolation or catalyst for building that out further. I think you are a balance of connection to people through really truly understanding them, very high emotional intelligence, that sort of thing, and bravery. You are very courageous, and you know you're courageous, and you know that you have a very strong sense of justice, and it is because this empath is so strong. You are literally someone who will feel the pain of others, truly. You would really sense it. So it's almost as though, having sensed it, you have to go into battle. I think you feel a lot of the time that the people that you care about and the people that you almost owe a debt to emotionally are people who are maybe not as strong as you. And I think there could be some truth to that. I think that you are a very strong person. So your depth of sensitivity is very much tempered by this capacity to go out and fight the good fight. And so I think that's how you see yourself, and you see yourself as driven by caring and unity and love for others and standing up against injustice when it's necessary. Now, the interesting thing is how you would meet yourself if you met yourself is, I think that two things would occur. One is that I think that you would almost think this person needs to let go of self-sacrifice to some degree. I think there's something in the pattern of what you do that others probably see as almost self-sacrificial, and you don't see it that way, because, as I say, you see it as a natural consequence of the feelings that you have for others and the fact that you want justice. But you, in meeting you, is seeing someone who needs to bring an end to certain things that are being self-sacrificial and that are too empathic. I think you would think you are too, if you met yourself, you would think you are too sensitive to other people. And you would say that there is something within this person that is, with Capricornian, I think that's picking up the Knight, but it's seeing it in a different way. You're seeing yourself as someone who has a great deal of material capacity and capacity to be strong and powerful in the world, but you feel in meeting yourself that some of that is sacrificed for the cause, for other people in some way. And you also see yourself as someone who could be incredibly attractive to other people. It's almost as though in your view of yourself at the moment, you almost make it very pure and it's all about empathy. But in meeting yourself, you see someone who is very, very attractive to other people. Indeed, could be a femme fatale. And so, again, there's a sense of why is that being suppressed? And here the energies are about discovery. This is actually the god in the particular pantheon that Maui comes from that brought fire to humanity. So a bit like Prometheus in Greek mythology, the inspiration brought to others and so forth. And pleasure with Katesh as the goddess is a sense of enjoying life. So I think that you would see yourself as someone who had huge potential for connection with others, pleasurable, enjoyable connection with others, and with dealing with the powers of the world in a form of discovery and moving forward and establishing things, establishing almost a dynasty, but that this person, you, that you're meeting, has given a lot of that up for some reason, has denied themselves something. So I think the interesting energy here is that there is a part of you underneath which you would recognize if you saw yourself, if you met yourself in this other dimension, that has sacrificed a bit too much for other people, that has put almost spiritual premium on relationship energies when there is actually pleasurable energies you could also have, and has seen yourself always fighting for causes against injustice or against power, when in fact you have the potential to put that energy into the discovery of power for yourself. So I feel like if you were to meet yourself in another dimension, you would understand the potential you have, that you are reigning in yourself. Now, this is not to say that this is wrong. Because that may still be ultimately in your heart and in your intent what you want to do. The interesting thing is, in meeting it in someone else, you would feel like they were giving up too much of what was good in the world for the sake of the cause and so forth, and kind of almost creating a sacrificial death for themselves, like of all that potential, all that passion, all that discovery, all that realization. So yes, it's like you in your self-image, you've channeled all of that into being the warrior, the person who cares for others. But in meeting yourself, you would have a different view about it. So let's use the tarot to see a little bit more about what would be your first impressions of you, given that this is sort of like the macro level of what you would see. What would be the first impressions if you were to meet you? Wow, for a start, it's all pentacles except for the major arcana of the Fool. So I think for a start, the Fool energy there is you'll pick up this discovery, this sort of like the quest. I think you would have a sense in meeting yourself of a kindred spirit on the level of there is a quest. And so in your current self-image, it's the quest of the knight, the quest for the Holy Grail, the quest for the empathy and connection and spiritual connection, the quest to right wrongs. But I think you would see in yourself the quest towards discovery, towards finding what was more real to this person rather than giving everything up. But there is a lot. You would definitely think that on a material level, this person, you, had denied a lot. Very, very loyal. You would pick up the loyalty. And again, you would very much relate to that. And the capacity to be this Capricornian energy and to bring that in and to have a very earthy and seductive sort of way of doing things as the Queen of Pentacles. But you would see yourself with the Six of Pentacles reversed. That suggests things are out of whack in terms of reciprocity. So this picks up this sacrificial energy. You would see yourself as not being able to create the foundations that you want, or really to be able to follow what you really wanted to do because, as I say, this sacrifice. So it'd be a very, very interesting person to meet. You would meet someone who was doing something very similar to you, but the way you would interpret it is that there was a kind of a self-denial operating and a need to trigger this Fool energy to actually start a new journey. You would probably try to talk yourself into enjoying yourself a bit more. It's very, very interesting. So that's the first impression. So something would happen. There would be some sense you would get of all this pent-up capacity to manifest and sort of sensual and attractiveness and pleasure and discovery, but a sense of it being clamped down in some level. And you wouldn't necessarily see it as being clamped down for the reason that possibly you do that. So let's ask what would happen as you got to know yourself a bit better. So this is just sort of like the first impressions. Let's drill a little bit further in and see what happens as you get to know you a bit better. Okay, the interesting thing is, as I was saying, I felt like this energy is like a catalyst, and I can see this here. It's almost as though if you met you in another dimension and you didn't realize it was you just thought it was a friend or whatever, that you would start to see a similar night energy here. As you got to know them better, you would realize that part of this sacrifice came from a very similar thing to you, this energy about wanting to be the knight in shining armor, the one who would actually go forward, very brave, very happy to do things and so forth. But you would see yourself or this person as doing that in a sense, in that separated way, in a way that is not sort of linked intellectually to the cause, but is just running in and doing things, not really connected to the heart in the way that you, I think, would like to see it. I think there's a disconnect going on here, and I think it has to do with a suppression of the pleasurable side of connection. And in seeing yourself, you would see that in the other person, and you would feel like they had, like you, a cause, but they were suppressing some of their love nature, and you would be thinking they need to actually connect more with others on that level. And again, on that Pentacles level, I think you would see the Capricornian side of things as a real key to this, but it would be about connecting to others. So I think you are someone who connects on an empathic level, but possibly you're so busy with the causes and with righting wrongs that you're not actually nourishing that side of relationship for yourself. And you would see this in yourself there. The more you got to know the person, the more you would think they're like me on that level, but they're not connecting to their heart in this. It's like they've shut their own heart off. They have all this energy and capacity for that, but they're denying it to some degree because, like you, they're dealing with people who are not honest. And you may, in fact, think of yourself that the denial in itself was somewhat dishonest. There is a possibility that you would start to think that this was a bit of a game, that maybe the sacrifice wasn't real. I think overall that's unlikely because I do think that you would relate to that, but I definitely think that you would feel that there was a bit of denial of self going on, a bit of dishonesty with self, and that there was a need to connect more with others, to come out of a sense of isolation and so forth. So as I say, it would be like seeing within yourself the thing you need to do to round yourself out so that you aren't always self-sacrificing, as I suspect you do in your life. Okay. So also under the Fool card, which is interesting because it came up here as well too, so it is saying this is a good sort of reading for you to discover this about yourself, and it's a journey you can go on to with that. I also had a variety of other oracles that show certain personality characteristics. So you've got to know yourself a bit better. You've seen what's similar, and in seeing what's similar, you may even have started to understand how you deny yourself, even though you don't realize that you're actually looking at yourself. So let's look at some other aspects of the personality that would be coming out once you got to know yourself. Aries and beige. Okay, so that Aries, of course, as a sign is sort of the dynamic, competitive, vivacious side. This is this pleasurable side. I think you would start to see that it is okay to have ambition for yourself as much as it is for causes and so forth. You're not going to be any less bold. You are a very brave, bold person, and you would see that in this person as well. But you would feel as though they had stitched themselves up a bit with beige, with being too conservative, too neutral, too dependable, too there for everybody else. I think that you would want to light a fire under them, which is in fact you wanting or needing to light a fire under yourself. We also get acquisitiveness and form. Okay, so I think one of the things you would start to think about this person, and I think this is picking up some of this Capricorn energy, and maybe even the pleasure, is that maybe a little bit too much of the way that the rights and wrongs of this world was being looked upon was on ownership, issues about ownership, and whether it's about that or avarice and so forth. You may suspect that under the self-sacrifice was something that was self-seeking. That I don't think would be accurate, but you might suspect it because I think you would be trying to work out why it is this person is so like you in some ways, but that you feel that they've blocked themselves in another way. And so it has to do with form. I think you would really pick up that this person was like you in many, many ways. And I think that they would trigger memories in you. I think memory for what was pleasurable and something of discovery and more about self. This suggests to me that something happened with you where you took on a cause, and that's become so much part of your identity that these other parts of your identity are a little bit more like memories, and meeting yourself would trigger that. But I think that you somewhere decided that doing anything for yourself was acquisitive and, you know, maybe avaricious, as I say, rather than it was something that was just as valid for you. Okay, and so what else? Okay, so the underlying thing around this, like a femme fatale as opposed to an empath, you know, Capricorn as opposed to the Knight, there is a possibility, as I say, that you would sense this simmering thing that is actually underneath you, and I think maybe misinterpreted a bit as something like narcissistic. Like, is this being done for some form of being attractive and drawing things to you and so forth, as opposed to the noble cause that you feel you're on? The interesting thing is that you are not a narcissist, and neither is the person that you meet. But it suggests to me that you sometimes deal with narcissists, and I suspect they're often people who meet you with equal power, equal firepower, equal intensity, equal skills, because you meeting yourself as an equal makes you sort of wonder if that sort of thing is going on. On the other hand, you can see a healing energy, and it's healing you just as much as it's healing, and you may be healing them. There's something in that, a healing energy that could be brought about by a sense of humour. So it's picking up the discovery and the pleasure and so forth. You can be a little bit serious sometimes. I think that the you that you would meet would maybe bring about a kind of sense of humour and make you sort of see it's okay to enjoy yourself as well. So I really think, as I say, it would be a revelation for you to meet you, because you would start to see the blocks that you put on yourself. So given that, part one, let's ask Spirit for some affirmations and some energy around how to make the most of learning this about yourself. So learning that some of the very things that are strong in you could be misinterpreted by you if you met someone else as being too self-sacrificial and or having some sort of other agenda under what appeared to be self-sacrificial. So I think there's a little bit there of you would doubt whether this person was as pure of heart as you were, but in fact it is you. So it's just an interesting exercise. So Spirit, give us a couple of affirmations for pile one in understanding this dynamic for them and how they would view themselves if they met themselves. Trust your heart, use your head, and releasing toxic things helps you grow. So you are very much in your heart. I think you might think that you were in your head. I think your first reaction might be, is there something more calculated about this person? But in actual fact, they're you, so they are in their heart. But they maybe need to get, so that part of you needs to get to your heart as well too, not just everybody else's heart. And releasing toxic things helps you grow. So not always battling, sometimes having the discovery, sometimes enjoying yourself, sometimes allowing yourself the pleasures of life will actually help you grow. And ultimately, when you do fight other battles, you'll do it from a stronger position. Let's ask the Moonlight Oracle for some guidance as well. Okay, so we have Pachamama, Mother Cosmos. So that's a very maternal, caring energy. So I think maybe being a little bit caring for yourself and recognizing who you are. Embrace the magic of your being. So don't push this other side of you to the side. And don't distrust it if you met it in yourself, I think is the message here. You are all of these things. And ultimately you connect to the divine feminine, the mother goddess, all of that kind of area in terms of being very nurturing and caring. That will not be lost. And if you explore these sides of yourself, that will not be lost. So, pile one, let's finish with something a little bit amusing. I'll use the music oracles, which if you haven't seen me use these before, it's a deck that has musicians over the years with their advice. So it can be just funny and to some degree with a sense of humour. That's probably good. but it also can have some messages that are very opposite for the reading. So I just want to get a music icon for you that might also represent something about a part of you that you would recognize if you met you as another person, and what advice that other part of you would give you as a final point. And we've got Madonna. Wow. So she's very much the queen of reinvention and so forth, and of strong female power in particular. So it's interesting because Bodhisattva, of course, was a female warrior and did a lot for women. So there may be something for some of you that relate to that. Some of your causes may be about things to sort of empower women and so forth, which would make you maybe a little bit more suspicious if you thought somebody was sort of a femme fatale into the pleasure side of things, if you met yourself and saw that in you. But Madonna says everyone is entitled to your opinion. So maybe that is a little bit of a gentle nudge here, that there is more than you can be for the right causes. So understanding that, it may also help you find the right people to collaborate with in the future as well too. She says pleasure without permission can be the greatest pleasure of all. So this is something about pleasure and allowing yourself. I do think that you hold yourself under strict regulation. And she says you are and always will be your own work in progress. And that's the whole feeling in this reading, that in meeting yourself, you would start to understand the sacrifices that you'd made that you maybe didn't need to make, and the things that you could allow yourself without losing this purity of your vision, because you won't. You will always be a warrior for the right. And you will always, as I say, have that mother cosmos sort of feeling around you. But you also can have a bit of fun, and Madonna has a bit of fun basically as part of her energy. She's certainly not shallow or anything like that, and nor would you be, but she is about life and sensuality and being all that you can be and so forth. So Polwyn, I hope that was fun, and I hope that it resonated for you and gave you a little bit of insight about how you would find you if you met you. And I hope in this particular case that it gets you to get off your back a bit so that you can enjoy life and know that you will still be this core person that you intend to be, because you certainly are, but allow yourself a little bit more leeway to also enjoy life. I hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And if you have any comments on this, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, pile 2, to your reading. So this side is how you see yourself internally. This is what you would meet if you met you in another dimension or in some sort of strange twist of fate, that you actually met yourself. And the interesting thing about this is I don't think there's a huge difference between the two. I think you're pretty well aware of yourself on many levels. But what I think you do is you underestimate yourself. And weirdly enough, I think if you met yourself, you would think this person either was or should be famous, should be well known, so unique, so different, so spiritually strong and deep and so forth, and someone who would help people heal and protect them and help them go through changes. And I think you are that. But I think what is happening here is you're sort of coming up as the goddess and the crone. You know within yourself that you have a lot of wisdom, particularly a lot of divine feminine, ancient sort of wisdom and so forth. You know you have it with the crone, and you know, I don't think that many of you are old. Some of you might be, and so this may be still the goddess energy in there, but I think a lot of you are quite a lot younger than that, but you already know you have the wisdom of the cycles of life, with Helios here as the God energy is showing that sense of life. There is that you are born and then you grow and then you die and then you're reborn. You have a sense of that. You have a very deep psychic and spiritual sense of the cycles of life, and you can see even when things are dark and even when things are at their depths or in the dark night of the soul, you have hope because you understand the cycles and you can make decisions. So you are someone who's extremely good in a crisis. You are somebody who is very good with change. You are someone who is very, very patient with other people and very inspirational. People do come to you for hope. People do see you as the light and the wisdom, often in the darkness. But you may sometimes escape from your own brilliance, I think. I think you underestimate it. I think you think this is just something from lifetimes or whatever, and you just take it one step at a time, but you hide yourself away to some degree. You underestimate it because meeting yourself here's the soul. So the 12th house is sort of escaping and hiding from that, whereas you see yourself when you meet yourself as someone who embraces it through the moon, through the soul, through emotion, who understands and sees what their value is with Aphrodite and can bring that to others, who understands what needs to be let go of. So the 12th house there is a bit like Anubis here. This is why I'm saying there's actually quite a synergy between the two. So you are able to sort of, this person you meet also understands the cycles and can protect others and so forth. But you see them as someone who should be extremely well known, someone who is meant to be in the spotlight in some way, someone whose unique spiritual approach is exactly what is necessary at the moment for the world. And so you idolize yourself when you meet yourself, but you don't recognize that that's who you actually are. So what we're looking at here is there is quite a synergy, but you are underestimating yourself. Very, very interesting. So let's use the tarot firstly to look at first impressions. Then the second sort of part of the tarot will look at how you see yourself as you get to know yourself better. And I think it's really interesting actually that the famous, this sort of sense that when you meet you think that this person should be famous, this person should be well known, and you were drawn to the movie tarot. That kind of says something, I think. And so certainly if you think that's for others and you idolize that in others, this is actually meant to be your story. And if you met you, you would think that's the story this person should be having. But it's about spiritual understanding. It's about understanding the cycles of life, but in a very unique way. I suspect you see yourself as being more part of tradition, more part of, some sort of traditional way of doing this, maybe Wicca or something, I don't know, something more traditional. And that's fine, but there's something very unique in you as well too, which you would see if you met you. So let's ask what your first impressions of you would be. Okay, so I think your first impressions of you, and this really fits with the feeling I have about this, is that you would look at you and you would think, you know what, you're not making your decisions about who you should be creatively in the world and how you want to communicate in the world, and so you're tying yourself up in some way, you're limiting yourself, and you're wondering if you have enough energy, but you should be sort of not be the Eight of Swords, you should be the Eight of Wands, you should be out in the world and you should be going really fast. I think you would be a bit perplexed when you met you. You would see this amazing potential and you would have this sense like this person should be really out in the world and spreading the message and so forth, but you would see yourself as being indecisive about it for some reason and maybe being close to what you need to do, but sort of like putting your own brakes in it. You wouldn't understand that that's the brakes you put on yourself because it's you. There's sort of like you've limited your own view of yourself. And so therefore in meeting yourself, you see the same thing. You see all this enormous sort of creative and sort of charismatic energy. I mean, really charismatic. You just don't know it. And if you met you, you'd be like, wow. But you'd be thinking like, why is this person not making the decisions? Why aren't they moving forward? So it's really interesting because, as I say, you would really look up to you if you met you, but you don't recognize it in yourself yet. So let's see what would happen as you got to know yourself a bit better. Wow, there's a lot of really similar energy coming through this, isn't there? It's like you've got the Five of Swords and the Eight of Swords and the Eight of Wands and the Five of Wands. You would start to see, so the Eight is in Swords, that kind of constriction, and the Eight is sort of release in Wands. You would start to see with the two fives here, which are all about change and conflict on various levels, that something needs to shift. Something needs to give. I think you would argue with yourself, to be honest. I think you would argue with this person, this other you, quite a lot. But it would be come from a very strong friendly base, and I think it would be taken as a friendly base as well. But it's like getting the different perspective of the hangman reversed and breaking out of sort of conventional roles and so forth. So yeah, I feel like you in your spiritual world you're following others or something, or you're following traditions, and you actually are meant to create your own tradition in some way. So I think you would argue with you a lot. I don't think any of it is, and you would bring a new perspective to you. None of this comes from a bad place. But it's interesting, it's all around unlocking the mental restrictions to allow the creative energy to come out and this charismatic energy to come out. I think you get really frustrated with you on occasions, but you'd like the person, you'd like yourself, and you should. You're a nice person. But you're just underestimating yourself. You would really want them to break free and to become what they could be. So I think the more you got to know yourself, the more that concept doubles down, and the more you're prepared not just to observe it, but to argue about it and to bring that fresh perspective to something, that the hangman reversed can do, so that what was conventional is broken apart and something new is brought in. And I do think that in the end, you and you would make a really good team. So, really interesting. Let's have a look at some other energies that were under the Fool card that you chose to come here. And these are meant to be some of the other personality characteristics you'd start to see in yourself that you either would recognise and think, yeah, that's me already, or would be a bit different and give you a different view of yourself as you got to know yourself a bit better. So firstly, we have wood and we have teal. Okay, so you may well have these sorts of physical characteristics, olive skin, athletic, great health, green eyes. You might just take them for granted if that's the case, and you may really start to see somehow how those combinations are part of what makes the you here unique and potentially somebody set for stardom. If not, if it's about wood more generally, I think it's something very natural. I think you would see the person yourself as a natural in what they were doing, and as objective, but a bit shy. So you're going to see this in you. This is who you are. You're a bit shy. You'll think, why are you shy? You're a star. But that's you. You would see them as supportive of you too. I think that the two versions of you would be each trying to help each other out, and you would know that the you was trustworthy because you're trustworthy. You're becoming from a very good place here. It's ironic because what you see in that as the blocks are the blocks that you put to yourself. Okay, let's see what else we have. Ideality and amativeness. So yeah, you'd think this person is as attractive as hell, like they really are, and they should attract people to them. And the Aphrodite energy, I do think that you, and therefore this you as well, is very attractive physically. Or if you put effort into it, maybe you haven't really thought about that. I mean, I think you'll be naturally good looking, but I think if you put even more effort into it, it might be, as I say, that you could become very glamorous. I think you just haven't really valued that in yourself, but you see it in you here. You see that attraction and so forth, and the ideal. You would really see them as an ideal, and you do. You idolize them a bit. It's just really interesting because it's you and it's what you could become. So let's see what else we have. Self-employed, nurturer, and adolescence. Okay, so I think that you would start to see this person should not be working for others, doing stuff for others, being in other traditions and so forth, should be actually blazing their own trail, which is the message to you, I guess. There is a nurturing aspect to this person. I do think that the two of you together would be each trying to help each other out and kind of idealising each other, which is a really nice energy. So as I don't think that you're particularly out of sync with who you are. You just underestimate it. And I think this is why we get adolescence. I think you haven't really fully understood who you are. Maybe some of you have come here are quite young and you don't yet know what... I did get the feeling quite a few are young rather than old, but like young could be 30s or whatever. It doesn't necessarily have to be sort of 20 years old or something. But maybe some of you are still really trying to work out who you are. That's what I think about adolescence. It's that period where we start to break free from what our parents tell us to do and that kind of thing and start to decide who we are. So I think maybe, particularly with this goddess and crone energy, you may have put a lot of store in what your family thought or your ancestral cultural traditions or whatever, and in meeting you in a different form, you would actually start to see how to free and liberate yourself. And you would like that in them. You would like this sense that they were prepared to define who they were in a way that maybe you were a bit shy about, though you'd still think that they were more shy than they should be. Okay, so given that, Let's ask Spirit for some affirmation energy about if you were to take on this information, if you were to meet yourself, have that experience and have the wisdom coming from that, what are some affirmations and energies that Spirit would give to you to help you really make the most of that? Okay, you're infinite, you will always be loved. So if you felt that you had to kind of follow others to be loved, you don't have to. In fact, your uniqueness and your capacity to potentially be the star of the stage is part of your infinite self and so forth. And you don't have to fit in. You won't stay here forever. So I think there is a sense of don't get stuck. There is a journey to go on here. It's a journey to self-love with Aphrodite. And the cycles, remember, you understand that in some level. You understand the cycles of life, as does the you here. So you know nothing lasts forever. Move forward, make the most of things. Okay, let's ask for some moonlight guidance for you as well. Got Artemis and Freya. So that's two goddess energies here. You're all over the goddess, divine feminine, like really, really strongly. And this is about wisdom, goddess of light and divine protector. And Freya is the warrior goddess of strength, passion and magic. So you will always, you'll fight the good fight and you will do it with wisdom. But that's two goddess energies there, saying again, elevate what you are seeing in yourself. Understand what you're bringing to the table. The interesting thing actually I'm getting about this is that on one level you know it, as I say, with the goddess archetype and with the crone, they're two very, very powerful archetypes. And so you know it. But what you're seeing in this person is more on the stage, the high priestess. It's almost as though you feel that goddess energy sits in the back and the high priestess as the channel of it becomes the one who is on the stage. It's an interesting energy here. You need to understand that could be your persona for how you spread the word of the goddess energy, but you're very, very connected to it. Okay, so to finish off, I want to use the music oracles for a little bit of an amusing end. It's often quite funny, the music oracle cards, but I just think it's to get an icon or an energy to really typify some of this energy of what you maybe meet in yourself and learn about yourself in the process. Wow, Kurt Cobain. So very deep sort of energy there, but a bit shy and retiring. Really, a little bit sort of uncomfortable with stardom, but so deep and such an icon. So that's an interesting energy there. He says, we're all in this mess together, so we may as well make some noise. And I think that's true. Don't hide this light, understand what you would see in yourself and embrace that. He says, don't become your own tribute band. So yeah, that's really exactly this message. Like, that's you. You don't realize it yet, but that's you. You don't have to be a copy of these people that you idealize potentially that this would seem to represent. That's you. And you can't buy teen spirit. It's interesting with adolescence. I think that's picking up that there is something about the discovery in this that would free you in a way to become more truly who you are and less the traditional. So you're meant to be the star, and if you met you, that's what you think you were. But for some reason, you underestimate that. So I hope that this message got through to you, Pile 2. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope it resonated for you. And if so, please like the video and subscribe. And if you do connect to this, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Beyond that, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, Pile 3, to your reading. So these cards are how you see yourself internally in your life at the moment. And these are how you would see you if you met you in this alternative dimension. And it's an interesting set of cards because I think that this has happened at least to some degree in both the readings I've done so far, but certainly in one other. I'm getting the feeling here that you underestimate yourself and you feel a bit stuck. And if you met you, the real you, in another dimension, it's like you would see the way out of that and the visionary and the depth of what you do, because you appear here to be someone who is incredibly smart, quick, a great communicator, someone who within organizations or within structures or frameworks is extremely clever and extremely adept, and often seems to be a breath of fresh air within environments. I think you'd probably get told that quite a lot in your work, or if you're studying sort of in classes that you're in. You are a very, very articulate, very clear speaker, clear thinker, and that's one of your real strengths, and you know it. And you probably do something in terms of a career, or you're probably looking to do something creative or in your career around your communication skills and the new that you bring to things. But it's within a conventional sort of environment, and there's a side of you that gets frustrated. In fact, you may move workplaces quite a lot, or even if you're studying, move from course to course, because you want on one level the security and the protection with Cancer there, because you have a very sort of sensitive heart, and you want to look after others and yourself, and that protective sort of warm emotional energy of Cancer, which I think you often think, well, you get that through security and stability, but there's a part of you that feels you lose yourself and what is individual. So I get the sense that you're quite restless, and that you may move on quite often for that reason, or you may always be wanting to come up with new ideas and so forth. But you think of it in the terms of sort of psychology and organizational psychology almost, or industry psychology, or if you're a journalist, it's the way things are done around here type of thing. And that's why you do sometimes feel missing in your own brilliance, because you are brilliant. What you would think if you met you is you'd think, oh, wow, this is what I need. This is the visionary. This is the old soul. This is the person who can work with others because they have such depth to them, and they can bring abundance in, expand things, and cause chaos when it's necessary. This person's here to muck everything up, but it's good mucking everything up because it's visionary, it's alive, it sort of like makes things better. Whereas I think you think of yourself as someone who can fit in, be a little bit quirky, a little bit different, turn the dial a bit, but you don't recognize how much you actually can. And if you met yourself, you'd be thinking, yeah, I want to work with this person because they're a visionary and they have a depth there. And I think the two of us together, with my verbal acuity and my sort of way to network and sort of work the system, and their vision, wow, what could we do? We're going to really cause chaos, but expansive, out of order, out of chaos, and abundance and so forth. So meeting you would be meeting the part of you that you have not acknowledged, and that could bring you out of this void, of course, this sense of being missing, to being not just the great communicator, the great individual, the quirky person, the person who knows how to work the political or organisational politics and still protect people and yourself, but also the person who knows when expansion is necessary, where abundance comes from chaos, where there's a vision, and we're working with other people and connecting to what's really deep in them is the thing that's going to break through. So you would find in this person what is actually within you to break out of the prison that you've kind of put yourself in that prison because you're very clever and good at what you do. And sometimes we can be made prisoners of that, pile 3. Sometimes when you're really, really good at something and you're really, really good at communication, it can become the thing that defines you and in its own way imprisons you, because you're more than that. You are a visionary. You are able to, and this is, your communication skills will be very important for this. When you do look at the chaos of change and expansion and abundance, you can actually articulate it. So it's not like you lose this, but I feel at the moment you've limited yourself down, and in meeting yourself, the horizons would expand. The irony being, and I am getting this irony quite a bit in these readings, that it's all within you anyway. So let's use tarot. So firstly, we're going to look at how the first impressions you would have of you when you met you, and then we'll look at what you would feel after you, or what you would think after you got to know yourself a bit better. Okay, I think you would scare you a bit at first. You'd admire it, but it would scare you a bit, because this sort of chaos energy linking to the Nine of Swords and the sort of expansion and the moon, which is the visionary stuff, I think you would be a bit in awe and a little bit frightened. But you would also be a bit perplexed, I think, because you would see sort of some of the emotional energy of the vision and some of the choices and really doing something with it as being a little bit suppressed in the person. Like, I think you would be thinking, you're here to really shake things up. Why aren't you doing it? And that's because you're not doing it. But you would also think it was a little bit scary. I think you would be a little bit in awe of yourself, a little bit worried about, it'd be almost like, is this my evil twin? Are they going to come in and shake everything up so much? But on the other side, I think you would feel as though this person, this you, is not fully realizing who they are either. I think you would see that collaboration thing. I think you would see it as something that you could, in connecting, both of you could get something out of it. But I do think that you would be really worried about whether they saw things that you just didn't see. You're used to being the smartest person in the room. You're worried that this person actually would be, but there's just different types of smart that are both in you. But I do think you would frighten yourself a little bit, but you would also be perplexed. You would think, why is this person not more ambitious? Why aren't they playing the political game? Why haven't they made so many material choices? Like, are they always in the sort of chaos and not landing anything? Why do they feel a bit emotionally withdrawn? And I think part of that is because of the depth of what's going on there. So I think you would just be a little bit wary. You'd probably be a little wary of each other, actually, but I think you would find them a little bit scary. But as you get to know yourself a bit better, what would you think? Okay, firstly, the fear that you would have is going to shift into a sense of liberation. Because it's you, really, you'd move from the fear of the chaos into embracing the chaos and the breaking of the boundaries and so forth. I think if you met you and you collaborated with you wouldn't stay in conventional environments in the longer term. You would really have a creative vision to move forward, and you would see this person as being a great partner for that. But you would wonder still, I think, why they hadn't made choices about connecting and so forth. The thing is that you are very strongly an individual, Artemis, with individuation. So therefore, are you over here. So this is about you marrying the two types of yourself within yourself. It's like you really are someone who needs to run their own race. And I think you would think that about this person as well. But you would definitely think there was a journey to go on that was worth it, that would actually be mutually beneficial and would be a great investment. It's interesting the Fool card came up, so I think it's definitely a sign from Spirit that this would be a very important revolutionary thing for you to meet yourself and understand all that you have within yourself. The other thing I'm getting is very, very specific, but with both the Page of Cups and the Lovers reversed, there is a theory I've heard about that some people are their own twin flame. And I'm not enough of an expert about it to tell you anything in great detail about it, but it's a very interesting concept. It's the concept of almost within the self, there are the two sides of that. And so maybe there's something there. Maybe you are someone like that. Doesn't mean that you can't have a relationship and a love and all those sort of things, but it might mean that there are two sides of the coin that are really spiritual to you. And the fact that we've got visionary and old soul over there, and then we've got the very mercurial and intellectual energy here, it may be something like that. It's very specific. It's not going to be for everybody, but maybe there's something there to think about. Okay, now let's have a look with some other cards that were under the Fool card that brought you to this reading. Some other characteristics you would see in yourself when you meet yourself and you get to know yourself a bit better. White and gold. Okay. So I think this is really about the spiritual. I feel in white and gold there are around spiritual energies as much as anything else. You would really start to see the purity of what you can bring to things spiritually and the wealth of it, the abundance of it. So the capacity to make abundance. That feels very alchemical. That feels like base metals turning into gold, and this feels like the purity and the elegance of the soul. I think you would think this person was much more spiritual than you are, but in fact they're you, so you are more spiritual than you think. But interestingly enough, I think that in meeting you, you would start to move, as I say, towards that alchemical sense of the spiritual purification and the actual abundance in life that can come with that. Have sight and time. Well, yeah, this is just picking up these energies more. It would really double down. You would think this person was psychic, this person was a visionary, this person was very spiritually advanced and old soul. They understand time. You would also probably think something was quite synchronistic. If this was to ever happen, if you were suddenly to shift timelines and meet yourself, it would be probably synchronistic with a time where you did need to shake your life up, because there's something, you would feel something synchronistic, something fated, something that was in the right timing to meet this person. And then we have skillful, introvert, and 20s. Okay. So you definitely do see this person as skillful, but skillful in a different way to you. And of course, it's you. So it is another set of your skills that you have, but you haven't really acknowledged. You would think they were shy a little bit with retiring and so forth. This is probably why in that first impression you feel like some of what they could have done in their life they didn't do. And as time goes on, you would be thinking it's because they're not wanting to be in the world so much. You're more in the world. And it's so you, I bet you anything, if you got a Myers-Briggs test, you'd be very close to the introvert extrovert. Like there wouldn't be a lot of difference between it for you. Or at least if there is, you may in fact be really living into one side of it. But I actually think you're very close to both. There is some times where you need to be on your own to get energy, and there are times when you need to be with other people. And this is the two sort of sides. But this is the side that kind of goes away and hides and gets their energy on their own, as opposed to being out life of the party, getting it from other people, which I think you feel more like a lot of the time. 20s, I think, just suggests that in meeting them feels like starting to really discover who you are and who you could be, the extent of who you could be. Because I think in your 20s, you've got out of school normally, maybe you're still doing college or uni, but you're really starting to discover who you can be, trying things on for size, working out what's working for you. And I think that what it's also saying is that over time, as you got to know you would realise that they weren't really that much older than you. That you're kind of at the same sort of level. You're both exploring. You don't have to be 20 years old. I'm just talking about that exploration that comes and the individuation that comes in that sort of age group. Okay, so let's presume you've met you and you've got to know you in that way. What information, what affirmations could Spirit give you now to make the most of those learnings that you would have had? Okay, this is really, it's two parts of the same message that we've been seeing, which is that you are bigger than you think you are. You are more than you think you are. And if your dreams don't scare you a little, if you're like playing the game and you're really dexterous, but you're not feeling a bit scared, you're feeling very, very secure, then you're not getting to all that you could be. They're too small. And if you really want to succeed, start before you're ready, because you're more ready than you think you are. Okay, let's get some moonlight guidance for you as well. Selenite and Ishtar. Okay, so selenite as a crystal is about purification. So there is something purifying about this, understanding this. Moon magic, energy shield or whatever. I think selenite might be something that's worth having around you. It may be a way that you can keep feeling that sense of protection if you start to own that side of you that's visionary, chaotic, expansive as well. And then Ishtar, goddess of love, passion, war and justice. That allows you to have that passion and go towards what you want. But selenite might be the thing that makes you feel okay, that you can take it step by step. You don't have to jump right into the abyss and see what happens. So to finish off pile 3, I want to use a card from the music oracles to get a kind of almost music icon from somewhere in history that might represent the you that you meet in some way. This could just be humorous or it could be profound. So we'll see what whether the Spirit just wants to have a bit of a laugh or whether Spirit wants to say something profound to close out the reading. Hey, we've got Barbara Streisand. Well, the original, that's for sure. And highly skillful, really, really good at what she did. Her voice in particular, her communication skills vocally, off the charts, as you know. But a lot of depth to what she did, much more possibly than people when she did a lot of comedies and stuff to start out with. But there's a lot of depth in that woman, so that's very interesting. What she says is fake it till you make it. So yeah, you are, and I think you kind of know that. You know all the games and everything. It's just that you don't understand how much you really have in your kit bag on that grander scheme. She says it's easy to fool yourself, but hard to fool an audience. I think that is that you have fooled yourself about that, but if you met you, you would see this in you. So people are seeing that in you, pile 3. I think that's the point. You are very adept in the environment you're in. You're very clever, all those sorts of things. But people do sense this other side of you. And you know how I said you would scare you if you met you? I think you scare people a bit. I mean, and I think it's something to know. You're very good, I think, at calming the waters, if that's the case, and making people feel safe. But there is something about you that is a little bit incendiary, a little bit sort of unpredictable, a little bit chaotic, and people do sense it. It's just that you don't realise that that's in you. You've kind of externalised it. She also says if you can't go right to the top, find somewhere else to go. So if you are in this sort of like it's always around an organisation, it's about the top, I think you're probably restricting yourself. This is about blow everything up, be expansive, go for the abundance, go for your vision and so forth. So I hope that resonated for you, pile 3. I hope you enjoyed the reading. Hope it was a bit of fun to meet yourself in an alternative universe and that it was enlightening. If so, please like the video and subscribe. And if you want to share anything about it in the comments, I'd love to hear. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome to your reading, pile 4. So these cards here are kind of how you see yourself, and this is how you would see yourself if you met yourself in this other dimension. And each of these readings have been interesting. They've had sort of different sort of energies to them. Quite often they've been about showing somewhere where you underestimate yourself or something like that. I think this shows two sides of what drives you. At the side that you recognize in yourself and the side that is also there, and I think you would quite look up to in yourself if you knew it was in yourself, but you may almost not understand it or not see that's the end game in a way. To try and explain this in more detail, over here we have archetypes of Scorpio and Shadow Queen. We have Jeanne d'Arc, so Joan of Arc, so faith, warrior, and Aries, war again, with expansion, infinity, and Saturn return, age, wisdom, and so forth. I think that your vision of yourself is someone who understands power, understands the depths of power, and when you have to go to battle and when you have to do that out of faith and out of wisdom, that there is more to the day-to-day world than appears to the eye, that we are part of immortality, we are infinite, and that the measure of what we do echoes into eternity, that kind of thing. So there's something about you that's very deep, very psychologically rich, very comfortable with power and with fighting for causes if necessary, and wise. And I think it's all very true of you. I think that many of the people who have come to this reading have maybe either been born into privilege, so understand power from that level, or quite the opposite and have had to deal with being disadvantaged and how to find the power that is not the obvious, the power that is more shadow power, the capacity to fight when it's necessary, but to be wise to know when maybe that is more around sort of psychological games and so forth rather than straight out argument, and having a sense about something that is bigger than yourself and bigger than the environment that you're in. If you met yourself, you probably think, gee, this person's smart, really in their head. I think you would very much think this person operates from their mind first and foremost, very articulate, with a kind of genius, with a revolutionary energy. You would recognize that similarity. So in you, that revolutionary energy against the shadow powers of the world is all about sort of faith and the capacity to have the war and the structures of the world and what ones are wise and what ones should be broken down. In seeing it someone else, the Uranian energy, the genius energy about revolution, you would see as being very much an intellectual thing, an understanding about what is coming in. And you would see you as maybe being a bit detached. Like it's a loner, not not different in some way. I think you are probably different in some way. Joan of Arc was very different. So I think there is that sense of being different and being a bit detached. You would see yourself as being very much in your head, and someone who was not so much about the battle, but more about the aftermath of the battle. So sort of the creativity in the home, hearth and home with Vesta, being able to create that home that is safe and secure and not riddled with all this sort of power stuff, and the renewal of things. So after the battle, you have the renewal. You would almost see this person as the person to clear it up after the chaos of whatever you have to fight. And hopefully, I think you would see the person as being very clear and able to bring in something that's more healthy in a way than what you're trying to fight. But it is you as well. So it's actually saying that you can take things from the battle into the renewal, into the making it something that is a new home and something that's safe and sacred for people. And that infinity and immortality and all that thing doesn't have to just be about being the Joan of Arc, the great sainted warrior. It is also about creating the new as well too, and having the genius to be able to do that. And I think that's what you'd see in the other person. You wouldn't see as much of the fighter. You would see the person who renewed everything after the fight in some way. So it's interesting. It's like you would see a continuation of yourself, but you don't really know at this point that you aren't just about the battle. You're also about creating and designing and bringing in the new and so forth. So let's ask the tarot for a little bit more information about your first impression of you when you meet you. Sorry, I just felt I hadn't shuffled that enough from the last time I used it. And it didn't feel right, so. Okay. So, you would recognise another queen. You would recognise another powerful person, definitely. But I think that you would see this person as being more about the heart and the hearth and home, and more about, and the loner, being alone. I think you have to deal with other people, convince other people and so forth. There is a side of you that would like to do things all on your own, and you would see this person as being someone who separated from the heart as well too. You are very driven from emotional sort of things with Scorpio there. You would not see that in the you that you met. You would feel that they lived very much in their head, that they were alone, that they didn't really want companions, they didn't really want someone to be walking the walk with them, and neither, if you think about it, did Joan of Arc. So it's something to maybe to think about whether you isolate yourself to some degree, and whether you come across as a loner and someone who's very much in their head to other people, when you really do want to create something that is good for everybody. You would definitely see this yourself as being vibrant and having emotional wisdom, but subduing that strength for some reason. Interestingly enough, I think if you met yourself in another dimension, it would be like you were someone who was powerful politically or something like that, or in society, and you would meet a version of yourself that wasn't, that was more of a loner and more sort of detached from that side of things. It's almost like the whole exercise of this would be to meet that other side of you that came almost from the other side of the tracks. Or if you were someone who wasn't powerful and you met this other person, it might be that they are, but you can see that their detachment is sapping strength. So it depends on which side you're coming from and which side is the person that you meet. But there is something here about the power and strength of being alone, but also the corrosive detachment that can occur with that, the power and strength of coming from the heart, but also the need for the mind. So I think that you would be assessing yourself for, is this a potential collaborator or is it a competitor, I think. So, and you may not understand where the you is coming from. That I think that you might come from, as I say, this very warlike, political, depth psychology, dealing with the shadows type of energy. You may not recognise that ultimately this person, and therefore you, really wants to find the right home and wants to renew energy and wants to recreate that sense of the eternal and the sacred in some way. So let's see what you would think as you got to know you a little bit better. So I think you meeting you would make you understand that your heart matters as well, would make you be more open to that. Like you would have that impact on the version of you here, and in doing that it would actually reflect back on you. It would give back a sense of the first principles about why you were doing stuff, which has more to do with the hearth and home and renewal than it does just to endless war and so forth. And you would be able to make the choice to renew. And it's interesting with the death card with infinity and immortality, that sense, the choices. And I feel like there you've almost got the queen. She almost feels like the phoenix arising from the ashes there. So that sort of sense of everything can be renewed, that is possible to do that. Whether or not you would feel fully able to or recognised by this other person. I do think you would come across to you as being a bit detached for all of this. I think that it would teach you a lot of things, but it would almost be teaching you what you didn't want to come across as to others. So I do think the part of this message is to understand the amount of power and depth that you operate with and the intellect that you operate with could be detaching you from people in some sense. And in meeting yourself, you'd have the same issue. Do you recognise in others that they also have something to bring to the table, that they also can be part of the fight? Because as I say, I keep going back to Joan of Arc, and she was an amazing character, but she was very much her own person apart from her divine connection. So is there something there that you need to realise in meeting yourself so that you can have better relationships with people and this sense of hearth and home and renewal? So I think you would see the way to do it, having met it, but I think it would be understanding certain things that you didn't want to be misinterpreted by. Because of this amount of shadow energy and depth, I think you could very easily be misinterpreted by people as being detached, aloof, very clever, maybe a little bit unreachable. And I think that experience would make you understand that, because you would see what really you want to achieve, which isn't always to be in the war. So let's have a look at some other personality characteristics that you would see in yourself when you meet yourself over a period of time. So stripes and water. So over time, you would see the connection between the Scorpio water energy and the air energy there. You would start to see the depths of emotion underneath the intellect. You would start to see that, and as I say, it's two sides of the same coin for you. You would also see a rebellious side and a respected side, and how you maybe can manage those two things. I think one of the things you would learn is that this rebellion against power does come from a very clever base, and you would start to work out how to command the respect while still having the emotional resonance around it. We have sublimity and hope. That's nice. So I think the sublime is all about what is pure and what is perfected in some way. I think that there would be a real opportunity for you to marry those two sides of yourself and to get deeper understanding and to get to the sublime, the infinite and all of that sort of thing in knowing that side of yourself better. And it would give hope, because there is hope in a way in war, but it's very heavy. There is even more hope in renewal and home. So I think that really meeting that side of yourself and seeing the way to understand that as the next step would be really powerful. Then we have problem solver, spontaneous, and fair complexion. So fair complexion might just be that many people who are coming here have a fair complexion. It doesn't have to be that. It could also be, again, that kind of sense of getting down to the skin, getting down to what is the pure essence of you. That may be what that's picking up. But certainly there's a spontaneity in that genius and the Uranus sort of energy there, and a problem solver. So I think you would see in this person the strategist, Maybe that's what I'm really getting at here. You are the fighter, but you are also the strategist. And if you can connect those two together, the strategist can feel a little bit too detached. The fighter can feel a little bit overwhelming. You bring the two things together and you get the person who does have the results and can carry it through to the end. Okay, so let's ask now for some affirmations from Spirit for you in learning this about yourself and learning what you would learn about yourself in meeting yourself. Releasing toxic things helps you grow. So yes, there are some toxic fighting stuff. And there is a little bit of toxicity also in the being so detached as well, because it's so easy to be misunderstood. Act as if what you do makes a difference. It does. Yeah, and it does. And I think that is a key thing here, Pile 4, because it's not just the war, it's also what you establish and renew after it. And you are both those things. Okay, let's get some moonlight guidance advice for you. Sacred sisterhood and space. Okay, so it says sacred sisterhood, connect with your soul sisters to uplift and inspire each other. So I think connect those two sides of yourself to uplift both sides of yourself. But I think it is also saying don't do everything on your own, because there's a bit of it in both of you. And certainly if you met it in yourself, you would think the person was a real loner and really detached. There are the right people to connect with. And you can also have the space that you need to also keep what you want to keep sacred. So hold space for your difficult emotions, for when you are dealing with the battles, for when you are feeling detached. Hold some space, but don't not connect to other people. Okay. So last but not least, I want to use the music oracles for a music icon for you. So it's meant to hopefully show a bit of the other energy of the person that you are, that you would meet if you met yourself, and get the advice. Sometimes it's just humorous and sometimes it's profound. So we'll see what particular messaging Spirit wants to give you to close out the reading and what icon they want you to consider. Wow, Beyonce. Well, there's the Queen if you ever got one. Fiery, strong energy, very strong sort of female energy and so forth. But maybe sometimes so iconic that a little bit untouchable, a little bit unreachable maybe. Maybe that's part of the energy there, like getting back to that fire. When she started, of course, she started with a group. So, but she became very iconic in herself. And so maybe it is that kind of balance that Spirit wants you to think about. She says confidence can be the most powerful aphrodisiac. So be confident in yourself, but be confident in your mind as much as in your cause and your heart and what you're going towards. And be confident you can see something through. Secondly, be both everywhere and nowhere at once. Well, that's interesting. That might be a way to use some of this loner energy. It's like that space that you find for yourself. Be in the thick of it, but also be able to go into the shadows and withdraw. The shadow queen, the loner there, and so forth. Find that sort of almost mercurial way of moving around the dimensions and what you're trying to achieve. And she also says, when someone sings from the heart, don't go tone deaf. So that's interesting, because if you seem detached, when what you really want is that kind of heart connection, the sense of home and support and the renewal, make sure you can hear, particularly your sacred sisters here, those that are part of the journey with you. Don't feel that you have to do all this on your own. Make those connections, because as I say, if you met yourself, you would feel you were a bit too detached, and that means probably other people feel that as well too. But you really don't want that. You really do want that connection, and you want renewal for people, not just the constant battle. So when someone sings from the heart, hear it. Don't go tone deaf. I hope that that's helpful and resonates for you, Pile 4, and I hope it had some good advice from Spirit and was a bit of fun in meeting yourself in another dimension. If so, please like the video and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And if you'd like to share about anything that this has inspired in you or connected with you, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings.